channel. Last week on the channel, we discussed all about how I got my first full-time permanent job here in Norway. We went over the entire story of how I got hired, how I found my job, what kind of tips and tricks you can do with your CV and cover letter to make it more appealing to Norwegian employers, and much more. If you missed that video, you should be sure to check it out before you watch this one, which is all about the work visas and how to navigate that entire process. But for this specific video, we are going to be covering job seeker visas for non-EU or Schengen zone citizens. I have personally applied for this visa before and am very familiar with the process. It is a very useful tool that foreigners can use when they want to move to Norway and start applying for jobs so that they can then immigrate to Norway on a work visa in the future. So someone can apply for a job seeker visa if they fall into one of two categories. The first category being someone who is already in Norway and is about to graduate from a Norwegian university and has a student permit in Norway that is about to expire, or someone who is conducting research here in Norway, but essentially it's just someone who is already in Norway with a student visa that's about to expire, and they have finished their studies. The second category of someone who can apply for a job seeker visa is someone who is from a non-EU country that has a visa-free visit deal with Norway. What does this mean? So, for example, I am from the United States, and the United States has a deal with the Norwegian government that Norwegians can visit the United States without needing a visa, and Americans can visit Norway without needing a visa. This means that Americans have something called visa-free citizenship, and therefore can apply for a job seeker visa here in Norway on those grounds. While these are the two categories one can fall under to first apply for a job seeker visa, there are some really big differences between the two categories and what kind of visa you're going to get out of it. So if you fall under the previously mentioned visa-free citizenship category, that visa is only going to last you 6 months. During those 6 months, you are allowed to live in Norway and you are allowed to look for jobs, but you are not allowed to work during that time. So you can't have a part-time job while you're doing this job seeker process. Another thing about this visa that is important to mention is that because it doesn't allow you to work in Norway, if you do find a job while on this job seeker visa, you can't start working right away. You would first need to apply for a skilled workers visa, get that approved, and then you could start working. There are also some financial requirements that you need to meet if you are going to apply for this 6-month job seeker visa. You need to show proof that you have about 23,000 kroner a month to survive on, or about 139,000 kroner for the entire 6 months you're going to be in Norway. And that needs to already be in a savings account in a Norwegian bank account. And that amount is equivalent to 14,000 US dollars. The downsides to this visa are pretty obvious. You're not allowed to work in Norway for an entire 6 months while you're doing your job seeking process, and it's only a 6-month visa. There are some pros though too. Anyone can apply for this type of job seeker visa if you have visa-free citizenship. This applies to a lot of people from a lot of different countries. You do not have to be living in Norway already to apply, and you don't have to already have some kind of Norwegian residence permit to apply for this. You can apply from your home country anywhere in the world if you have this visa-free citizenship, and if you meet the financial requirements of having 14,000 US dollars in a Norwegian bank account, equivalent to 139,000 kroner. The other category one can fall under when applying for a job seeker visa is the recently graduated in Norway and holds a student visa that is about to expire, or researcher category. This is the category that I fell under and the one that I used to apply for because I had been previously attending a Norwegian university and was about to graduate with my master's. If you apply for this type of job seeker visa, you have to be living in Norway with a student visa that is about to expire and apply for this job seeker visa before the student one expires. Or you have to be a researcher already living in Norway with valid legal resident stay and have your own funds, and then you can apply for this job seeker visa too. One of the biggest differences between this visa and the previously mentioned one is that this visa is valid for 12 months. Meaning that the financial requirements for this one are double what they are from the previous one. It's still that you have to show that you have 23,000 kroner a month to live on, but because that is doubled, because your visa is good for a year instead of 6 months, that total comes out to be 278,000 kroner, or around 28,000 US dollars. That sounds like a lot, but this visa does have a lot of pros that go with it. Now, the downsides of this visa are pretty obvious. You already have to be living in Norway and be a student for you to qualify to apply for this type of job seeker visa. and the financial requirements are double for this one compared to the other one. However, there are some really important pros to make note of as well. The most important one being you are allowed to work while you have this visa in Norway. This is really important for two reasons. First of all, it means that you can get a job in Norway during the time you have this job seeker visa, and you can use that job in Norway to fit the financial requirements to get the visa in the first place. Even minimum wage jobs here in Norway usually can meet the financial requirement of giving you 23,000 kroner a month, meaning that even though the financial requirements are doubled, you're able to work the entire time and meet those financial requirements. So unlike the 6-month visa, you don't have to show all of those funds upfront in a savings account in Norway. You just have to show that you have some kind of job or part-time job that is paying you that much money every month. You can document this with pay statements, and that should be sufficient to get you this type of job seeker visa. You don't have to have the entire $28,000 already in your bank account. The other really important thing about this is that if you do receive a job offer in Norway, you can start working right away. You don't have to first apply for the work seeker visa and wait for that to be approved before you can start working. You are legally allowed to work on this 1-year job seeker visa. Now, of course, you still have to apply for the worker visa because that is going to extend your stay in Norway beyond 1 year, but you can still start working right away and that shouldn't be a problem. So with that in mind, I do think that the 12-month visa is the better option. It's longer, you're able to work while you're here, you're able to start working right away if you do receive a job offer, and you're able to have an income at least to support yourself financially the entire time you're in Norway as opposed to just relying on your savings. The downside, of course, is that this is not very accessible to most people. You first have to be a student in Norway with a student visa that's about to expire before you can even apply for this one. But if you do go through the process of going to school here with a student visa and then transition onto this job seeker visa, it is a really good option. But now that we've covered the two different types of job seeker visas and the qualifications for them, let's get into the actual application process, which looks relatively similar for both types of visas. So first you're going to want to go to the Norwegian immigration website udi.no. Then you're going to go to the front page and click Want to Apply. From then you will scroll down, select Work Immigration, select Job Seeker Visa, and select which category applies to you. Whether that be the 6-month job seeker visa where you're not allowed to work right away and you have to provide all the funding up front, or the 12-month job seeker visa for foreign students graduating from a Norwegian university that allows you to work the entire time and not provide full proof of funding upfront. Then you click How to Apply. From there, you will fill out all of the questions that are asked of you and answer accordingly to how it applies to you. I'm going to fill this out as if I were a student about to graduate in Norway, which is actually the visa I applied for in the first place. At this point, the website will generate a custom checklist of documents you need to provide and an application form. Firstly, you will want to complete the application form. You will be prompted to create a login for the immigration website and be taken to the application form. You will then have to fill out the form answering questions all about your identity, work experiences, how long you've been living in Norway potentially, if you're applying for the second type of visa, etc. After you have answered all of these questions in the application form, you will have to pay a service fee. This amounts to 6,300 kroner for both types of applications and is the equivalent of $630 US. Once you pay the fee, the application can be submitted, and then you are taken to a page where you can book an appointment with the police or the service center for foreign workers. If you are not applying for the 12-month visa and are not in Norway, you will have to book an appointment with a visa application center located in your country. However, for those of you who are applying here in Norway, the service center for foreign workers and Oslo Police Department where you do this application process is right next to the Oslo Central Station. It's really important to book your appointment with immigration as early as possible. These appointments tend to fill up really quickly, and because of long processing times, it's better to do it as soon as possible. Once you have booked your appointment and filled out the application form and paid the servicing fee, you can now go to the checklist of documents and begin collecting them and preparing for your appointment. The checklist of documents you must provide is essentially the same for both visa categories. The checklist includes your passport as well as copies of all the used pages, a printed out copy of the application form that is signed by you, a passport-sized photo of you if you're applying from abroad, documentation showing where you live or will live in Norway, documentation showing sufficient funds. This will either be 139,000 kroner if you're applying for the 6-month visa or 278,000 kroner if you're applying for the 1-year visa. You will also need to provide bank statements from the last 6 months, documentation of your education, usually done by providing diplomas and transcripts, and documentation of work experience if you have any. But this is not required. And lastly, you will need to print out a copy of this entire checklist, fill it out manually, and sign it. Once you have gathered all of these documents, all you need to do is attend your visa appointment. Once you're at these appointments, make sure to take all the documents there. They will be submitted with your immigration officer. They will take your photo, your fingerprints, and signature, and then they will inform you of the waiting times for your application. The waiting times are currently between 4 to 6 months, so it is quite a long process. Because of these long waiting times, I would advise if you are a student here in Norway looking to apply for the job seeker visa to apply for it and attend your appointment at least 4 to 6 months before your student visa is going to expire. That way, when your student visa expires, your job seeker visa is ready to go. If you don't do this and your student visa expires and the job seeker visa still hasn't arrived, that is okay. The rights and obligations you had on your student visa are extended while you have a pending case with immigration. All you need for evidence is to have the expired student visa and a copy of the confirmation that you submitted an application with UDI for a job seeker permit. And during that entire time your student visa is expired and you're waiting for a decision on your case, all the rights and obligations you had as a student visa, aka legal stay in Norway, those are extended. So it's no problem. I went through this entire process myself when I graduated from the University of Oslo back in June of 2022. The processing time for my application took 5 months, and I was here living in Norway on an expired student visa while waiting for a decision on my application. I actually got the visa delivered to my house in December, right before Christmas, and accepted a job offer shortly after. Ironically, my job seeker visa arrived just before I got a job offer, which meant that I now had to go back to UDI and do the process all over again, but this time with a skilled workers visa. That is a completely different visa and a topic for another time. I will be making a separate video all about the skilled workers visas and talking about it in my next video. But thanks so much for watching this one. I hope it was very informative and you all learned something about the job seeker visas for Norway. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.